Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Maverickstar Reloaded interviews. Live up in the top right corner, we have Maverickstar Reloaded himself, Gene Beards, who just woke up from a long nap to join us at 3 a.m. UK time, which is diamond time, over at the Oppenheimer Ranch Project to talk about the progress over at Maverickstar Reloaded. Gene, thanks for joining us. How the heck are you?
Great, and it's always a pleasure to be on, Don. Few things I suppose we could get out of the way. First of all, we have the first magnetometer built. We're just waiting on a couple of batteries to come. These little button cells are not the sort of thing I have lying around, but as soon as they do, we can get on with the programming of this. I'll put a couple of videos up there to show people how we do that. But this is the sort of device we're going to be placing on these high-intensity regions over the Northern Hemisphere. I know that you're going to be showing a graphic released a little bit later from the government over there with regards to the latest position of the geomagnetic North Pole region. And, as I said, was the case to the people following me over on my channel, and I think last week we mentioned it. We can now see from the model that they've released that there is a massive difference with regards to that Canadian pole. You can just quickly see, anyone can see that there is something different with the Canadian pole, and they don't have to be an expert. And what that is the intensity is rapidly reducing. It's probably around about another 7 years before the overall intensity over the Canadian region totally dissipates. And I predict at that point we'll be in the weak field lines like we've been talked about. So it'll be a transition from the strong field lines into the weak. And what that means for us is that what we've been watching over the last probably 40 years of data, and recently over at the Mavstar Observatory for the last couple of years at least, we've seen as the pole has been migrating slowly through the strong field lines, we've seen an increase in all this weather activity, such as the the troughs of the jet stream dipping a lot further towards the equatorial regions, and in doing so bringing that Arctic air straight into the subtropical regions, and dissipate, just dumping it in precipitation, causing these flash floods around those regions. So when it moves into the weak field lines, which I predict we've got about 7 years left, we're going to see a lot of this activity increase very dramatically. And what we've seen over the last 10-15 years with the climate chaos is only going to accelerate and become a lot worse.
Global warming. Now let's get serious.
Yeah.
Let's get serious, Gene. The World Magnetic Model is out of cycle, and it has been released. We've been waiting for it, and because of the government shutdown, there was some delays in releasing this. And here we can see coming out today, as the magnetic North Pole zooms towards Siberia, scientists update the World Magnetic Model. Now, what you're looking at is the old 2015 data, where you can see the strong magnetic field lines here over Canada that you were just discussing, and you could see the even more intense region here developing over Siberia. Now, if we look at the data that they released today, which you and I just talked about, this is kind of obfuscating from the truth, because what you get here is this picture truncated. So what you see is some magnetic field lines here, and you get this picture over here truncated. Because again, we're looking at a straight on view of this curvature here, Gene. It's hard to look at Mercator and then polar maps and see the same thing. But you and I both agree that the pole that they're calling out here, this is the new 2019 pole, is not the pole. There's still a pole over here in Canada, and there's still a pole over here in Siberia, and what they're showing us is the middle of the two poles.
That's correct. It's like I showed a few times over the last week or so. If you get two magnets and then a compass. The compass will point directly in between the two magnets. And what we're seeing with what they've released here is a weakening of one of those magnets. It's if you want to do a little visual experimentation to give you an idea of what's going on, just move one of those magnets away from where the compass is pointing in between the two, and what you'll see is as you gradually move, in this case the Canadian pole away, you'll see the needle move faster over towards the Siberian one. You know what they're calling, at the moment, the pole migrating towards Siberia is a bit of a incorrect statement, because the highest intensity of that region over, what is classed as the Siberian pole is right over Russia, central Russia, and is already in the high intensity region of that, dipping into North China. So the pole over that side of the northern hemisphere is already past Siberia. And we're going to see over the next 7 years, as the Canadian pole, deteriorates more, we're going to see this compass, or our compasses, moving more faster towards the direction of Russia, China, and heading towards, its counterpole in the southern hemisphere, which is already over mid-Australia now.
Yeah, and when we're looking at this, I don't know if you can see it as updated as I have it. We're looking at the 2015 World Magnetic Model, the field declination. And you can see in this graphic display clearly a south pole. There is one main pole that delineates the positive and the negative down there on the south. And you can see the magnetic field lines in blue moving off to the left and the red moving off to the right. But if you come up to the North Pole, you see a much different effect. And the blue and red lines are split here on this green line, which goes up into Canada. And then they're split here on this green line, which is wholly up here in Siberia. And that's an interesting piece of data, because the World Magnetic Model released today claims a single pole only in this region, when there could actually be another pole placed somewhere else. But the reason this asterisk is denoted, Gene, is not for science. It's not for me and you to know that there's two poles, one here and one here. That white star is for navigation only. That's what I think. It is not for science. It's not for truth. It's not to prove that the poles are speeding up. It's the average of the two, and this is the new GPS navigational North Pole. It's the average of the two. And if what you say is correct, what we've seen here is that this Canadian pole is weakening quickly. I think that if this falls off to a certain point, Gene, that this white dot is going to shoot over here very quickly. There is going to be a period in the next decade where this gets so weak that this pole appears to explode over here into the Ukraine.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going to take place. I think anybody now looking at these magnetic maps can see what's going on. You can see that over the Siberian high-intensity region is getting stronger, and the Canadian one is obviously getting weaker. And it's a matter of time, it really is. And, this should bring it home to everybody watching this, what is going on with our planet. It is one of the rarest events. The last time the Earth went through a full magnetic reversal was 780,000 years ago. And there was 500,000 years of delay in that doing it, as it used to go through these magnetic reversals almost on a regular time period of 350,000 years. We're now seeing something, a rare anomaly, take place in our lives, and it is going to affect everybody's day in life, probably within the next 10 years. Now, if you remember, scientists at one point from all these organisations was talking about this event being 1,000 years away. It's no longer 1,000 years away. And, even to this day, some of them say, it could be hundreds of years away before the reversal actually takes place. It's not. It's going to be within the next decade. And evidence of that is if you look at the last data that Swarm released, which was a small video compilation of stills, you could see that at least from 2011 to this current, 2011 to 2016, there was still 2 years missing from this compilation, but you could see that the Canadian region has lost most of its intensity over a period of about 6 years. So,
if you just
things
look
are
at the
moving.
data, Gene, that was released on Monday, you could see here up in Canada that the last intensity line here is 20 Gauss, and that the new intensity over here over Russia goes from 20 to 30 to 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 40, 50, 180 Gauss. We're talking a factor of 10 from one to the other, which means in a decade, this could actually be 110 times stronger than that, which means there will be no remnant pole in Canada. This will rapidly shoot over here, and we're going to see a very different planet. Now, what I mean by that is a number of things. Because as this reversal quickens, and I had a bunch of amazing papers pulled up on Friday because I was trying to get you onto a podcast Friday night, and I forgot to pull them up. But one of them is a recent paper, Gene. So just like you were saying, about 20 years ago, everyone thought magnetic reversals took 1,000 years or more. And then around a decade ago, some papers came out that suggested it's 150 years. The data is in. And then in the last 5 years, we have papers coming out. And I had one pulled up. The most recent one was 2018. It was amazing. It showed a magnetic reversal in the ice core data that happened in 58 years. 90% of the flip in 58 years. 90% of the flip in 58 years. Now we're already 20 to 30% into this reversal, which means that we could have less than 30 years. We could have less than 20 years. The newest data has been hedged. It is getting rapidly smaller. So who knows what happens in 10 years? If we do simple experiments with magnets like you do, and anyone out there, I implore them, go onto eBay, buy a set of magnets for $10 and start playing around with them. Different types of magnets, round ones, flat ones, and see what happens when you overload a magnetic field. It flips rapidly. It's almost instantaneous.
Yeah, there's a good video on poleshiftnews.com which shows, I think it's called Nova, or the production team that done it was actually Nova. And I think it's midway through that video, you can see that there's a few scientists that are studying volcanoes and lava flows over a period of time. And in particular, they're looking at the magnetite that froze during that lava flow. And they said, well, judging at the rate from, about 6 foot up this lava flow to where they are, taking the core samples all the way along, they said, if we was back in the day when this lava was flowing, what we would have saw if we was looking at our compass would have been a reversal. And it was doing it that fast, the reversal, that you could have actually have seen the compass moving itself over that period of time. They reckon it happened a lot quicker. What I suspect they was looking at was the actual poles in the weak field lines moving a lot faster. And, I've done some experiments or visual experiments for people to show them that when you get a little magnet close to a compass and you just rotate it over the poles, when it gets to about 40 degrees, you can see the actual compass starts to bend and yonder a lot more, like it doesn't know whether it wants to be in the north region or the south region of the compass. And if you just move it a little bit more than that, it rapidly moves. So it's a slow migration up to about 40 degrees. And then after that point, it goes into the weak field lines and reverses. And I think what we're about to see when the Canadian pole dissipates in intensity over that region is exactly that. We're going to see these poles go into the weak field lines and they're going to move very, very quickly. And if what we've been seeing has been a relationship with magnetic poles and weather anomalies over the last 15 years getting worse and worse, as they even call it themselves from these organisations, climate chaos, then whilst these magnetic poles are in the weak field lines, we're going to see an uptick in the weather anomalies such as flash floods, droughts, increased tornadoes, hurricanes. We're going to see all this on a much larger level, and it could also affect, it could also be, something that affects tectonic levels. We could see an uptake in earthquake activity, volcanic activity. It could be changing the geo anomalies across all the ranges. The thing is, we simply don't know because there's no recorded data. Because we never had all this, high-tech equipment, 780,000 years ago. Some scientists would argue we weren't even in an intelligent form 780,000 years ago, but we just don't simply know what to expect because there is no recorded data. But if we just gauge on what we saw over the last 10, 15, 20 years with regards to this weather anomaly and this escalating chaos that we're seeing, then we can just expect more and worse to come once the poles go into that transition and reverse.
Well, Gene, there's lots of layers to a magnetic reversal, and you're studying the magnetic reversal as a scientist that's studying the magnetic fields. There are many other scientists that know the effects of magnetic reversals. As the magnetosphere wanes, we're looking for increased cosmic rays coming in. Now, as these cosmic rays come into our planet, there are many scientists that have proven, and let me just see if I can pull this up. I'll pull up this graph real quick. The work of Svensmark that's happened over the last few decades and the Cloud Project have proven that what you're looking at here is stratospheric radiation increasing since March 2015 through 2018. And it is very rapid. We're talking 10, 15%. The further north you go, here's Maine in the United States. You get more of a 15% increase over 2 years. And Oregon, pretty rapid. California is a little lower because the readings were from the central. So the higher you are, northern latitude, the more rapid the magnetosphere is collapsing. So when you're up by those poles, you're actually closer to space as they weaken because the atmosphere, the magnetosphere, the troposphere, the ionosphere, it all gets thinner. And what that does is it allows more cosmic rays in. And that's all types of stratospheric radiation, UVA, UVB, UVC. This affects the ozone hole. We now have papers coming out that it's not you, folks. It's not you. It's the sun. It's the sun that controls the magnetosphere, which controls the cosmic rays, which controls the size of the ozone hole. This hole grows and shrinks every 10 years with solar cycles. Now, as we go into the grand solar minimum, the ozone hole should get massive, and the magnetosphere will get thinner. Cosmic rays will rain down. There'll be more cloud nucleation. And just like you suggested, more atmospheric compression, more global flooding, biblical flooding. We're talking the 100 and the 500-year flood being annual, and the 1,000-year flood being decadal. So we're going to see deluges of epic proportions. Same thing happened during the last magnetic excursion about 12,000 years ago in Egypt, which caused all that water erosion on the Sphinx, which you were just saying, many scholars don't believe there were, intelligent life before 7,000 years ago. There were no advanced people. But I think that the last magnetic excursion, which was not a reversal, there were catastrophic events, and we're entering a magnetic excursion now. If it's not a full reversal, it doesn't matter. The effects of these excursions are climatically catastrophic. And not only that, there are many authors, many of which that are going to be at LeakCon 2019, like Robert Felix, who for decades have been screaming that the magnetic reversal and the magnetic excursion is what causes evolution. And now we have papers coming out in the mainstream that prove that cosmic rays are the only thing that we now know causes mutation in genes. So if cosmic rays cause genes to mutate, and Robert Felix thinks that magnetic excursions cause evolution, then the pieces are adding up, and our future is going to be epic. What say you, Mav?
It's right. First of all, our planet is calling. There's no doubt about it. We see the dream of CO2 causing climatic change now becoming a fairy tale. There are plenty of data sets out there where you can see CO2 still rising, but global temperatures are plummeting. And if we compare that with the 400-year solar cycles, we can see that when sunspot activity drops off to these low levels that we're seeing now, we are already below Dalton minimum levels, even though we are at the end of a solar cycle, which is normal for sunspots to drop off at this time. But we have seen over the last 3 consecutive solar cycles this becoming a regular pattern. We are definitely heading into a period of time where the Earth is going to cool, and for a couple of reasons. You're absolutely right. Cosmic radiation is one of these now main contributors to cooling this planet, and it's going to continue to cool the planet even more so, because we've got two main problems that are causing the same problem. First of all, we've got the sun going through a grand solar minimum, which means that the heliosphere that usually bathes our whole solar system and protects us from cosmic radiation is shrank. So there's more cosmic radiation inbound as that, through that problem alone. And then adding to that, we already have a 20%, probably 25, maybe even getting close to 30% weakened magnetosphere as a direct result of this Earth now going through a magnetic reversal. Anything from this point on could spell a major global catastrophe. One of the main things that's going to affect us is food production on this planet, and it's already starting to affect some of these countries like China. As you know, Diamond, they're no longer, or if they are, they're not major exporters of staple foods anymore. So, when you see big countries like that now pulling back those stocks of staple foods instead of, selling them and exporting them like they used to, then these are the signs of great changes to come. We've got 7 billion souls on this planet, nearly 8 billion souls, and that's a lot of people to feed. And the area in which we grow the food on this planet is shrinking rapidly as a result of the climatic change, the unpredictable seasons, and all the disasters on top of that. If we continue to have more cosmic radiation in the atmosphere, in turn, it's going to put more water molecules in the atmosphere. And, here's another, visual experiment people can do. If they, boil some water and just shine a torch through that water vapor, you'll see that at the other end of that water, at the other end where the torch is passing through it, the beam of light, it is a lot less than what it would be if that steam wasn't there. Now, our atmosphere contains a lot of water molecules, and so that solar radiation now has more to try and penetrate to before we can get that heat to the surface. As a result of more cosmic radiation, there's going to be more water vapor up there, and it's going to be blocking more of that sunlight out. In turn, we're going to see this northern hemisphere probably go back into a glacial state. Again, if you look at the 11,000 year solar cycles, you can see that from 11,000 years ago, when we came out the back of the last glacial period to this present time, these sunspot numbers have constantly gone down exponentially. And, as a result of that, we're going to have more reflective substances, in ice over the northern hemisphere, which means more solar radiation will be leaving the Earth instead of being trapped in these darker places like the oceans. And as a result, the planet is going to cool, and it could be a prolonged period. It might not be an ice age that lasts like the last one did during the Maunder minimum for about 50 years. This could be a glacial period which lasts again for thousands and thousands of years. And if ever we was at an intelligent level many, many thousands of years ago, then, you know, I can say this, our technology and our very delicate society that's based solely on technology this day and age is at a serious threat, as it could have been many thousands of years ago. And you've only got to put, you know, our technology out in the elements for a very short period of time, and what you'll find is that they will oxidize very quickly. They'll rust. The plastic will oxidize. You know, there'll be no trace of an intelligent species 200 years from now. Most of this stuff wouldn't last 200 years. If we look at some of the great monuments that the Egyptians built, they built them out of stone, and in that it would last the test of time. You know, if we look at our buildings that we build out of the strongest material, concrete now, what a lot of people don't realise is it takes, even though these buildings are built, 100 years for that concrete to harden to its most hardened strength. And then 100 years from then on, it starts to decay. So most of these great structures that we've built around the world won't be here, you know, over in a couple of thousand years. They'll simply, you know, they're not built to last like, you know, these geniuses was building, you know, many thousands of years.
Yeah, awesome points, Gene. All amazing points. And today I even came across some South American aqueduct features that are purported to be, you know, 6,000 years old, but they could literally be 15,000 years old or older, because many of these areas that we live upon today, where the sites of major cities and towns are, they have been built upon and built upon and built upon because their strategic location. Most of the ancient structures have been plowed under in North America. There were over 10,000, potentially 50,000 mounds, which are pyramid structures east of the Mississippi, and they're all gone. They were here in the 1800s, but they have been removed because of the capitalistic model and the erasing of history. Leah and I, my partner tonight, were talking. We were talking about how I've been now recently acquiring all ancient books. That's my hobby. I buy first edition manuscripts from the 1800s, books about North America. And what you find in these books is that all of the information does not jibe with current information. They're talking about millions, hundreds of millions of people living here in 1500. We're talking about tens of thousands of cities, which are now all missing with no information about them. The history is written by the people that conquer the regions, and they do it for their own means. It's for the elitists are in control. They control the narrative, they control the history, and they control the science, which is why global warming is now a religion worldwide. But we got into some good science earlier where you were discussing the lag effects, where CO2 has gone off the charts and the temperature has not followed as they purported it would. And we talk about that lag all the time, and there are some good papers coming out that suggest there is a multi-decadal lag in solar activity and temperature. So what you can see here in the graph I'm showing, Gene, is this huge peak from the end of the centennial minimum. Now, before the centennial minimum, it was the solar activity was lower. We had the Dalton minimum. And then before that, it was even lower. We had the Maunder minimum. But as we came into solar max here, starting in 1900, the solar max actually peaked in 1955. And there was, in one day, over 350 sunspots on the Earth in 1954. And people were scared to death. They thought that the whole world was going to burn up back then in 54. But then solar cycle 20 happened and the temperature dropped. There were record snows in the 60s. In the middle of summer, Kennedy had to wear a sweater when he got murdered, and on and on. So solar cycle 20 started the new ice age scare. And by 1973, solar minimum of 20 here during this really low cycle, the whole world believed we were entering an ice age. But Cycle 21, 22, and 23 happened, which led to 40 years of warming because the sun exploded again. And then we drop back into cycle 24 in the last decade, which is very reminiscent of 20. It's almost identical to cycle 14, and it's cold again. We have some of the coldest temperatures ever recorded in Minnesota in 5 cities since 1883, which is right here in these solar minimums. 1883 was the minimum of 1112, which is, look at where we are. The same TSI is back here. It's like the same exact cosmogenic environment giving us the same record low temperatures. And we're matching the same temperatures. And people don't understand why. But it's so simple to look at this graph and to listen to the science that we're speaking and to understand the relationship. The sun controls the climate. And it's not just the sun. It's not that simple. It's the sun controls also the magnetosphere. It also controls cosmic rays, stratospheric radiation, and it also controls the magnetic field of the Earth. And these are unprecedented times. This is a once in a million lifetime chance that a modern, intelligent species will be able to document this scientific, the most important scientific occurrence in our lifetimes as it happens. And I thank you for being one of the leaders in this. And I want to thank everyone that's stood up to the plate and has become a patron of Maverickstar Reloaded. Because what you're doing is you guys are helping accelerate the science to the forefront. 115 people now are funding the building of magnetometers that will be placed worldwide so that we can have instantaneous information, not 5-year-old shit that they're lying to us about when they show us this picture with this beautiful little white star. We will know real time what's happening to these field lines because we're going to place these magnetometers in the way of the field lines. So, Gene, here, take a look at this picture and explain to the people what is actually happening with the magnetometers that you're building. And once they get the data, what we'll be seeing.
Okay, so we're going to put 2 of these magnetometers towards the Canadian intensity, which is reducing at the moment. And what we anticipate will happen there is the intensity is going to continue to dissipate. We're going to record that and how much it dissipates and over how long a period. We're also going to put 2 magnetometers probably around the China border with Russia. And as we see these large intensity areas over Siberia, Russia and China right now, we should start to see on our magnetometers on the ground either side of these big bows that we see, we should see the intensity increasing. That will give us an indication that that pole is actually moving towards the magnetometers. We're going to do the same on the southern hemisphere. We're going to put them central on Australia, west and east coast, so that we can get an idea of how fast that magnetic intensity region that we can see when we look at the swarm data, a huge plume of high intensity region there moving towards the magnetometers. So we expect to see them, showing more readings. Again, if we can chart this over a period of time, we'll know how fast they're moving. And if we suddenly see a rapid movement, we can give people the heads up of what to expect during those transitions through the weak field lines. We can say, look, guys, if what we based and what we saw over the last 10, 15 years happen with the climate on this planet and a lot of other anomalies getting worse and worse, if we see that in the strong field lines when the pole's moving slowly and then all of a sudden that transgresses into the rapid movement through the weaker field lines, then we can expect things to get a lot worse. What we'll be able to do with these magnetometers is warn people when that is, as opposed to relying on, the government, giving us these junky 5-year-old magnetic maps.
Yeah, well, I agree with you because the 5-year update, which now has to be updated annually, is going to continue, and as well as the obfuscation from the truth. They're not going to be telling us when the shit's about to hit the fan. But if we have these magnetometers in place, Gene, and we see it happening like you saw 4 months ago, and it took them 4 months to report on what we already knew 4 months ago, what we're going to see as soon as you and I and all of the Mavstar Observatory participants, we're all going to see it together. What we're going to see in the media is like government facilities shutting down, people going underground, people missing. We're going to see it happen in real time. So we're going to, as the public, know when they're about to go hide and not tell us anything, because you and I are well aware that if this rapidly increases, there are going to be major effects worldwide that occur during this reversal.
Yeah, it's a real disappointment, really, when we've waited, for something to come from these major organisations, and then when they actually do deliver it, they deliver this. They've not even put the GPS coordinates of where the magnetic compass is supposed to be pointing. They've given the general public absolutely nothing with this map, and all they have done is just reinforced, really, what we pointed out again, well before these organisations. 4 months ago, I told people on my channel that the magnetic North Pole had an uptick in its behaviour and was doing something a little abnormal over the 18 months that we've been tracking it with our TriMag system. Again, a couple of weeks ago, I showed the public, I said, look what's happening over in the Canadian region. If they don't talk about this, then we know for certain that they're covering up information. And I think, they have had to come out clean, at least with this, what we're looking at, and show the general public that there's a massive difference in the intensity over Canada. But still, there is no GPS coordinates of where the magnetic pole is or where they say it is. They don't talk about the split poles over the Northern Hemisphere, that there is, in fact, 2 poles. There's a lot of information not there. And, what are they doing with the taxpayers' money? It makes me wonder. If NASA was to build magnetometers like this and build the general taxpayer for it, that these magnetometers that I'm holding in my hand now would cost £4 billion each. We've had we've had a small budget, guys. Of less than just over £1,000 sterling. And we've managed to build 10 of these. Well, we will have. We'll just wait for some components. This is the first magnetometer. And, we're going to put these in 8 different locations around the world. And we're also going to try and target the epicenters of these high-intensity regions with these magnetometers. And we will inform the public of the truth with regards to how fast this migration is actually taking place and all the implications that we see are taking place along with that.
Yeah, what I'm trying to pull up for the people watching now is you soldering one of these units together. And if you want to come see out how Gene puts them together for less than $4 billion each, it probably costs about $125 plus maybe $100 worth of his time if we pay him $25 an hour. So for about $200, Gene, am I about right? We can assemble one of these magnetometers. So for 10, it's about $2,000.
Yeah. Yeah, if that, yeah.
Yeah, so if we can get 100 people worldwide donating to Mavstar Reloaded, we could literally have a budget where we can have thousands of these. And then we could make a literal 3-dimensional maps of the magnetic field. We could do it monthly, probably, if we just download the data and then do some type of topography map using the mag data. We could get a pretty good... we would almost have better data than their satellites for just a few $1,000s and the participation of citizens worldwide.
Yeah, the more data we collect, the better the information will be. Simple as that. And, with regards to the way they collect the data, they've got 3 satellites. 2 of these satellites is slightly lower than the 3rd one, and it just simply passes over the Earth with a magnetometer on it. Basically, what's in this box, it just passes over, and as it goes over the Northern Hemisphere and it comes into the vicinity of one of these high intense regions, it takes a reading. And, it keeps repeatedly doing this. All this information is then sent back down to NASA, the European Space Agency, because they're the ones that are controlling the swarm mission. And they'll put it into a graphic, which looks pretty. And I'm sure we can do that when we start collecting the data. I think that is our next step, not just to chart the data in a two-dimensional, pictogram. Let's try and get somebody out there who's a bit of an expert with graphics and have him compile the data onto something that looks really good. Like I say, I think we can give NASA a run for the money. We just need, the support to do it. We don't need the £4 billion per magnetometer.
I have the spreadsheet guys, Gene. I have guys that are compiling information all the time. They know how to use, they know how to find the ruse in the climate data. They know how to compile other types of data that are available, but they're available in spreadsheets specifically so the public cannot glean any information from them. And I think it is your job and our job and my job to implore the public to get involved, because the more of these beacons that we have, that we can fund, where we have responsible citizen scientists that are willing to spend some time monthly to download the data, to send it to you reliably so that we can crunch the numbers, the better result we'll have. And we will have people in the community, I guarantee, that will make topographic maps of this information. They'll make interpretive magnetic models so that the more units that you can solder, the more units that we can ship out worldwide. This data set in the next year could be some of the best, and many people worldwide will be relying on this simply for peace of mind. This is about knowing before the powers that be allow us to know.
I really think some of these mainstream organisations are going to lose the support of public funding if they carry on in, delivering, the information at the rate that they are and, the quality that they are. I don't know how they get the budgets passed for these, operations that they do right now, because they're not giving nothing back to the public at all. What we do, we collect data. We've already got a TriMag, which has been running for 18 months now at the observatory. And we also have nearly 9 months worth of magnetosphere strength data. And we're just going to up our game that little bit more with these magnetometers now that we're going to put over the northern hemispheres, over those high intensity regions, and over the southern hemisphere. We've even had somebody volunteer from the Falklands to put some of these magnetometers there. So amazing. The public are behind us. The public are funding as well. And, it'll be the public that actually gets something back out of this. We're not like the mainstream organisations that are going to classify the data. This is for the public. It was funded by the public. It's going to be given back to the public, whether they like what they see or not. Some people might not like the fact that these dramatic changes are taking place in their life. And, it upsets some people. Not everybody want to hear that the world is slowly going to shit over the next weeks, not weeks, but years to come. It's like, you're nice and comfortable in bed and somebody comes along and rips off that warm blanket and exposes you straight to that cold truth. This is how some people react to it, whereas other people, deal with it in an entirely different way. They say, okay, this is coming. It is time to start taking some preparations and, planning for these events. And, we see what people are doing as a result of that. We've got, them stockpiling small amounts of food, some provisions, some seeds, and they're taking that insurance policy out to protect their family and their loved ones. And, that's what we want to encourage more of.
Amen. Proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance. Well said, Gene. And if you guys want to be part of a cutting edge scientific endeavor, all you got to do is come over here to Maverickstar Reloaded, where he's creating videos, and become the next patron. I was just talking to Gene earlier. I said he has almost as many patrons in a week that we have in a year. And that's because we're taking on a scientific endeavor, the likes of which have never been thought upon, where we can take small amounts of money, disseminate them to citizen scientists around the world, and they can help in one of the most comprehensive scientific endeavors ever undertaken by an independent group. We're going to have our own unique real-time Mavstar Observatory magnetic data. It's not going to be Trimag. It'll be Octamag soon, and soon it will be Cientomag, where we have 100 magnetometers worldwide that the public is funding, sending us information, where we have top people graphing this so that we can extend this information real time to you, the people that need this information, that don't want to wait 5 years for ESA Swarm to give us some fluffed down version of the lie. Because when the event happens, it's going to be quick. We're going to have, you don't want to be the last person preparing. And like Gene said, start now. Take a couple dollars a week. Buy some extra rice. Learn how to grow some food. Start a garden. Because if the system's shut down that you rely on, like shipping to the supermarket, there's no more food there, what are you going to do? If you don't have any experience, you're going to be screwed. So start failing now at growing your own food until you become an expert. We grow enough food to feed dozens of people here. And by next year, I will be in a position to implement a growing regimen to feed thousands of people. I can feed at my ranch, if I kick it up a notch, everyone that lives within 500 miles of me at my ranch. And there are hundreds of people that live in my community that also know how to grow food. So all we have to do is tap shoulders and start picking up food production if the system fails here. We're safe. People that live in major cities, even suburban areas, they're not safe. You have to have a bug out plan. You have to understand that the topic that Gene and I are talking about is serious. There have been magnetic excursions and reversals in the past, and they have led to mass extinctions on the Earth. We are entering uncharted territory, and we want to know when it's happening. And we want you to know with us. If you can join in the endeavor, the more patrons, the more money we have, the more magnetometers. Gene Beards, the psycho, will continue to solder in his living room, which he probably rents for a little too much, but it does have neon lights, so that also makes it nice. Gene, we went long tonight, yeah. But I'm sure the people want to talk. They could listen to us all night. So before we go, we're going to talk about some conspiracy theories next time, and why the powers that be might want us not to know this information. But what are your parting words for the people who have listened to this amazing podcast?
I want to thank you for your time and patience listening to us. I hope you take on board some of the things that we've discussed in this podcast. The poles are migrating, and it's not like these organisations say it's going to be in thousands of years. It's going to be within the next decade, guys. So, take heed of that warning. And, if you can support us, I'm sure Diamond will put a link there for you to come over to the Patreon account. And, we are going to be getting these magnetometers out, hopefully by the end of this month. The other 9 of these that I'm building already should be finished. And if we can, on the ground, you're going to see me with the people that are going to be having these in their homes, going through the calibration so that we can set them up and from that point start collecting the data. I designed it to get it out as fast as possible and get some data coming back in. I didn't want to waste any time, because I think now with what we're seeing over the Northern Hemisphere in Canada, with the depletion of that high intensity region, I think it's become more urgent now. And like I say, if we can get the data in as fast as we can get it back out to you guys as fast as we can. And, just, take on board a few things that we've discussed here, because it's a serious topic. If we was in the business of building planets, I'm sure that the magnetic poles would be one of the first things that we would include on that planet to make it a livable biosphere. So, Diamond, it's been a delight and pleasure to come back on this podcast with you. I'd definitely like to come along maybe next week and talk about some other topics with you. I'm sure your audience would love to hear some of my opinions on those topics. And, just give me a call.
Excellent. Well, you heard it from the myth, the man, the legend. He's no myth. He is Gene Beard's Maverickstar Reloaded. You can support his Patreon page, which I told him to get started just a month ago, and it's exploding. If we can get this to 200 patrons, we'll be in an excellent position where in 1 year we're gonna really challenge NASA, and it's gonna be interesting because just like he says down here, the little guy gives NASA a run for his money. Yeah, I believe that wholeheartedly. So support Gene Beards. If you don't have any money, you can just come over here and subscribe to his YouTube channel and watch the videos. Because if you let the commercials run, we get a few cents each commercial. So that's why we monetize these videos, so that we can actually get value out of the time we're spending. I spend 8-10 hours a day doing research. For all you guys out there on the internet, I also spend another 8 hours on the ranch, and I barely sleep. I know Gene's working himself to the bone. I barely know this guy, and I feel like he's my brother because he has a huge family and he works hard on the little money that he has. And now he's about to start this new job and he's got to do training. It's crazy. Life is crazy for all of us. But if you want to support something that matters, please support Maverickstar Reloaded, the channel. Become a Patreon. Continue to support Oppenheimer Ranch Project, because without your support, I ain't doing this shit. And I know without your support, Mavstar's getting old. But the people care, and we want to supply you this information. So thank you again, Gene, for taking a nap and coming on at 3 a.m. and doing all that nonsense that we do. We love you, and I hope we see you out at LeeCon, and we'll definitely see you next week right here on the podcast. I'll give you the last word.
It's been a delight and pleasure, Diamond. Thank you for having me on.
Be safe. That's a boom.